Today, we're going to look at questions with differentiation and integration. If you notice question 1, they ask you to find dy dx. Differentiate first, and part 2 asks you to integrate. And you'll see the same thing for question 2 and 3. My differentiation is in blue, integration is in green. And notice how the integration is the complex cases. We have never integrated these kinds before. But don't worry, we are going to use our part 1 to help us for part 2. Let's look at question 1. Given that y is this function, let's see what rule can we use. Product rule, yes. Why I use product rule is because I have two functions, an exponential function and a trigo function. 1 minute to apply your product rule. Product rule is differentiate the first, keep the second, plus differentiate the second, keep the first. When you do this, some of you will realize I can cancel out some terms. If you can't see it, let's expand further. After expansion, I realize I can cancel out two terms. Cosine x, they cancel each other out. Final answer is this. Write down my final answer, negative 2 e power x sine x. Usually this is a 2 marks question. Method 1 for product rule, final answer 1 mark. Second question is a hence question. What does hence mean? Use your previous part. So before I integrate this, I let you know that there are two methods to do this. I will show you the first and easiest method. First step, I write what I found in part 1, but write it in integration process. Based on part 1, if I integrate my result, I get back my original function. Of course, please add a plus c for integration. Now, see what the question asks you to have. They ask you to find, hence, I need a scalar 5. So how do I create the scalar 5? Based on this, currently I have a scalar negative 2. So what I will do is I will divide by what I have currently. Divide by negative 2, multiply with what I want, which is 5. So I need to multiply with negative 5 over 2. If I do this, I must do the same for the other side. Multiply by negative 5 over 2 for everything. Let's rewrite what I have in this step. My left-hand side will become what I want to find with the scalar 5. For the right-hand side, I get my answer when I expand with negative 5 over 2, but then my constant, negative 5 over 2 times c, will still give me a constant. So I can rewrite this. I put a plus c1. If you don't use c1, you can also use c. But this will be my final answer. I will show you the alternative to part 2. If I start from what they want us to find with scalar 5, I will compare with what I have in the original part 1. Part 1, I start out with negative 2. So I'm going to create a negative 2. If I use for part 1 answer, I know when I integrate negative 2 e power x sine x, it will give me my original equation. But I need to now compare my 5 and negative 2. These two are not equivalent, but I can introduce a scalar so that it can make it equivalent. What is the fraction when I multiply with negative 2 will give me 5? It will be negative 5 over 2. If I multiply these two together, it will give me my 5. But when I do this, I must put a negative 5 over 2 for my answer as well. So this will give me the same answer. Come to question 2 where I differentiate my ln. Before we start differentiating, we should also start simplifying my cert. I know my cert is power half, so I'm going to rewrite in terms of power half. Okay, now I'm ready to differentiate. Differentiation of ln would be bring the terms down, differentiate it, put it up. When you have this step, you already have a method 1 mark. Let's continue to simplify it. I simplify and change everything back to certs. Now, you have to recognize that I can further simplify. A hint would be combine the top into one fraction. How I do this is I use the common denominator, root x squared minus 1. This looks a bit complicated, but I am actually just simplifying into one fraction with a common denominator. Hopefully now you can notice that this is equivalent to this. So it's looking something like the fraction a over b divided by a. What this is that my fraction a over b is dividing by a. If I don't know what's this again, change flip, bring the a down, and I realize I can cancel out my a. My final answer would just be 1 over b. So if this is my a and this is my b, my final answer would just be 1 over square root x squared minus 1. And this is my answer for part 1. And this is my answer for part 1. I'm going to use the same method. I'm going to use a simpler method for part 2. Basically, rewrite my first equation from part 1. From part 1, I can write this. Now, it's just seeing what's the difference between what I have currently and what they want. They want 5 over 4. So I'm going to do that by multiplying the scalar 5 over 4. Once I do that, okay, I must do the same for the other side as well. 5 over 4 whole thing. What I will have is what they want to find. I put in the 5 over 4 inside. This will give me the answer 5 over 4 ln x plus x squared minus 1. This plus c, what will become when I multiply these two? It will still give me a constant. So I just have to put a plus c and I'm done for this question.